an old friend of mine who I've known for decades. And let me start this off by playing Jeopardy. The answer is alongside Bruce Edwards, this meteorologist was the first to appear on the newly launched Weather Channel.
Let's see, who is Andre Bernier?
That would be correct. Andre, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very, very much for having me on your program.
Well, it's going to be fun to talk about. For those who don't know Andre at all, he is up in Cleveland, my hometown. And every time I go to Cleveland, I would go by his shop and visit him and my mentor, Dick Goddard, who I grew up watching in Cleveland, Ohio. And Andre and I have known each other. Actually, we met when I was interviewing for the Weather Channel. You know, he had a wry sense of humor. I mean, the man would have zingers and it would take you about 15 seconds to realize, oh, that was a zinger.
Yes. He was absolutely fast on his feet, always had one-liners. You're right, that would take about 10, 15 seconds to sink in, and then you'd walk away thinking, wait a second, that was really hilarious. And he was a hoot.
But you mentioned he loved people, but part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast in my living room, because I know the favorite spot of Glaze here, one of my cats, is here. And Dick Goddard had an affinity for animals. Do you know where that stemmed from?
Well, Dick grew up on a farm in Greene, which is kind of a rural community. And back in the day when he grew up, it was really rural. It was very close to what is now the Akron-Canton Regional Airport, and still there's a lot of rural farms there. So he grew up on a farm, probably surrounded by a lot of animals, and developed that love for animals, and had a real zeal for protecting who he called the 4-foots from the 2-foots, and to make sure that those 4-foots were treated with respect. And and to this day he has a legacy with the Goddard law here in Ohio, which protects animals, and I think it raises the penalty for any kind of cruelty to animals to, instead of a misdemeanor, a much higher offense. So it makes it a little more serious. He was there for the signing for that, and so that is his lasting legacy, to protect the 4-foots, as he would call them.
Well, the other legacy, and I don't know if he ever realized this, but since he was on TV from 1961 to when he retired, was it 2016?
Yeah, it was 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, yeah.
I can't imagine how many young men and young women who grew up in Northeast Ohio, who watched him on TV, who said, I want to be a meteorologist, wrote him a letter, went down to the station. I'm pretty much mirroring my story.
Right.
That I was a third grader going into third grade, petrified of thunderstorms, wrote him a letter, gracious enough to invite me down there. How many countless other meteorologists, not just in broadcasting, but how many meteorologists did he know that he at least deposited the seed for? I can only imagine. If I have like 100 here in Kansas City, he had to have thousands.
It could have been, at the very least, many hundreds, and perhaps 1,000 people, perhaps that we're not even aware of, that either started a career in meteorology or one of the offshoots of meteorology that are in that career today. I've spoken with folks from NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, who started in the sciences because of Dick, and of course they're not in meteorology per se, but they're in one of the branch sciences because they watched Dick Goddard.
So that hope, I hope that registered with him before he retired, at least. I hope he realized that he touched so many lives, pretty much, in the generations will go on and on and on. So I hope he knows that.
I think so. I would imagine, because virtually everybody that worked in the Fox 8 weather office when he retired to some degree, had watched him, grown up with him, and been influenced.
So what was it like on the day he retired? I'm sure it was emotional for him.
Oh, sure. I still remember. Of course, it was a big event. Everything was about Dick Goddard. Everything, the whole newscast, essentially. If there had been any kind of national breaking news, I think it would have been buried by the fact that Dick was retiring. But we were showing clips of him through his career, very important events like the blizzard of '77, and where he was standing outside in 70-mile-an-hour winds. That was just one of many clips that they showed. They brought people in to wish him well. The Cleveland mayor, Bernie Kosar, of course. A lot of people don't know this, but Dick, for decades, was the statistician for the Cleveland Browns. Every single Sunday home game, he was there doing that, and he volunteered and was the statistician for the Cleveland Browns. And so a lot of Cleveland Browns came in that day. Right. And at the end, when they showed him the Guinness Book of World Record official certificate that he was the longest running local television news personality in the world, and they proved it from pay stubs that they found back in 1961, because they had to prove it to Guinness.
Right.
So Guinness, asked for all these things. They finally dug it all up. And he was just flabbergasted. He had no idea. They renamed the road, South Marginal Road, after Dick. It's now the Dick Goddard Way, not South Marginal Road. With all of these things that came up at the end, he could barely talk. I mean, he literally had just tears running down in his eyes. He could barely talk. And I think maybe the last thing out of his mouth before the newscast ended was, "Be kind to the animals," with tears running down his face. Be kind to the animals. That was his thing. Be kind to the animals.
And other stations, like we call ours the First Alert Weather Center, but your weather center is now named the Dick Goddard Weather Center.
It is, yeah. And that was part of the surprise too. On his last day, we had to keep him out of the weather center that day because the work was done in less than 24 hours from the 11 p.m. the prior night right up until the next day. Work was going on in the weather center to rebrand it the Dick Goddard Weather Center. And we were given explicit directions by management. If you see Dick coming in the building, do not let him come into the weather center.
So how did you do that? How did you keep him away?
Well, you know what? It's pretty easy to do with Dick because we kind of redirect him. Hey, Dick, we've got everything done. Don't go into the weather office. You got a ton of stuff that you're doing today. Just go into the studio. We'll have everything ready for you. And besides, you've got these dogs and cats coming. Oh, dogs and cats are coming. Well, then I have to be here for them. So we were able to pull it off.
Nice. And, I've got paraphernalia. I showed you the sticker. I've got my Dick Goddard
there it is.
Almanac.
Yeah.
And I have my Dick Goddard bobblehead.
I love it.
Remember
That's
those?
great. Oh, yes.
Toward the end, since again, Kansas City has no idea of who he is directly, unless they are also transplants like yours truly. In summary, what would you like to tell people about this man who was a meteorologist from 1961 until he retired? What would you say about him?
Boy, to try to summarize a man who was so complex is really difficult, but I suppose if I had to do that, I would have to say that the one driving force of Dick Goddard is the fact that his focus was to be kind not only to animals, but to people, whether they deserved it or not. He says, just be kind. And his weather office philosophy continues to this day. We carry it. And his philosophy, and he always preached this to everyone that was ever hired, he says, we don't scare people, we inform people. Just tell them what's going on. Don't stand up on the desk and scream at them that they're all going to die because of this weather scenario, which is what, and of course I'm exaggerating, but his point was basically just be yourself and get the information out quickly so that people can use it, and leave the rest of everything else to the people's common sense. They know what to do. And people really responded to that still to this day. I occasionally will get stopped at the grocery store or gas station, wherever, saying, hey, listen, we really appreciate the fact that you just tell us what's going on in a calm fashion, even when the weather is going crazy. And that was a Dick Goddard philosophy.
Yeah.
We take it. We're carrying that today. So, boy, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but essentially be kind, be yourself, and be stable in a severe weather scenario.
And I tried to do that here in Kansas City. So without even knowing that was the philosophy, it certainly rubbed off on me. So I appreciate that. Andre, I guess I will see you next time I'm in town. Thank you for your time, sir.
I hope that soon, and let our meetings, whether they be on Zoom or whether they be in person, be continuous and often.
There you go. And thank you again for a little more insight to my mentor. So you take care, sir.
All right, so long. Thanks again for having me.
My pleasure.